are with more of You're All Doomed, the podcast that is trudging its way through Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, 13 minutes at a time. I'm your host, Greg, and I've just misspelled my last name.
And I'm Brain.
And this segment begins with Jessica on the phone while holding a very bald little baby, and ends with a young police officer behind a set of cell door bars. Should I redo that?
Maybe, because cell door bars is a little clunky. Jail cell bars or...
And here we go with more of You're All Doomed, the podcast that is trudging its way through Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, 13 minutes at a time. I'm your host, Greg, and I've just misspelled my last name.
And I'm Brain.
And this segment begins with Jessica on the phone while holding a very bald little baby and ends on a young police officer seen through cell door bars. God damn it, why am I saying cell door bars?
Bar cell jail. Station police.
Through the bars of a jail cell.
There you go.
It's not that fucking hard, dumbass.
You can just pick up with the, and this chunk begins with.
Okay, that'll help. Cell door jail bars.
Metal bar door jail.
And this chunk begins with Jessica on the phone while holding a very bald infant and ends on a young police officer seen through the bars of a jail cell. The now clean-shaven Josh has entered Diana's house, yanks the phone out of her hand, and slams it back on the cradle, disconnecting the call. He grabs her head and tries to force her down, but she sees in the mirror that it's Jason being reflected back at her. So she can see what's going on, which terrifies her. She, struggling for her life, reaches into the little table that the phone sits on and pulls a gun out of the drawer, which she uses to shoot Josh in the side of his head. I have one big question about this scene, and that's, why is there a lit fire in the fireplace? She just got home from work, and we didn't see her light the fire.
Yeah, I don't give a shit, Greg. What I want to know is the stupid reflection thing that they keep going back to. Like, I know we saw it earlier in the morgue, but it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would Diana look in the mirror and see Jason when Deputy Josh is standing right in front of him?
Well, mirrors show you reality, right? Like if I'm angry about something, but I have a happy look on my face and I look in the mirror, it'll show angry me, right? That's how they work.
Sure, I guess. I just don't know anymore.
In any case, Josh has now been shot in the head. Diana proceeds to walk over his body instead of around his body, so naturally his eyes open and he grabs her leg, tripping her. I did like the little gout of blood that pours out the side of his head wound, but then he crawls up her body, opens his mouth, and some weird, wrinkly little turd begins to snake out of his mouth towards her face.
It's like Gene Simmons during a Kiss concert. It's just like, I don't know what's happening. Something is coming out of Josh's mouth, and it appears that he's trying to insert this thing into Diana's mouth. And I know that sounds really sexual, and, a lot of our listeners probably got really excited just then. But it's just another what the fuck moment where this is obviously a continuation of what we did not see with Phil the coroner when he was leaning in for the kiss with the freshly shaven Deputy Josh. We just saw him open the mouth. We didn't see what happened next. This is what happened next, apparently. Some worm or big demon tongue is coming out of his mouth and trying to infest the next person. So that's what's happening in this movie right now.
At that very moment, Stephen arrives to hear the important information that Diana teased earlier and sees this struggle going on, but it takes him a second, even though it's directly in front of him.
I love that this adult man is wearing his high school Letterman jacket. It's like the only thing this guy loves more than his Letterman jacket is Rohypnol.
Wow. Boom. Yeah, that was the point that my wife, never having seen this movie before, brought up when she happened to be watching part of it last night. He looks way too old to be wearing this outfit. It's almost like Tim Allen is wearing his high school letter jacket. So I get the sense that maybe these characters were all supposed to be about 7 years younger than the actors that were ultimately cast wound up being. Because it makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to establish that Steven and even Jessica are like college-age kids, that's fine. I'll buy it. But from appearance only, Steven looks exactly the same age as Diana, who's Jessica's mother. So you got to give us some sort of context here of how old these people really are, because this guy just looks like a doofus running around in his Letterman jacket.
Yeah, he looks like he's clinging to the past way too hard. We get a thoroughly unpleasant close-up of this worm thing that is protruding from Josh's mouth, although admittedly it would have been great if this movie were in 3D. Steven does some sort of half-assed flying tackle, and he and Josh scuffle, but Josh chucks a hilariously obvious stunt double into the wall, and while Diana goes for help, Josh proceeds to the little kitchenette and grabs a sharpener from the knife block. He hurls it and lands it directly in Diana's back.
Initially, I had a problem with this because I'm like, okay, you've got this knife block with all these cool like butcher knives and stabbing weapons, and he grabs a knife sharpener, which is not particularly sharp at all, and chucks it across the room. But I was like, you know what? I kind of like that better, because the idea of this, relatively blunt object impaling someone in the back sounds a lot more gruesome than a sharp knife that's going to penetrate the skin pretty easily. Josh
catches sight of himself in the mirror, and there's a weird moment of ambivalence on his part as he sees his own reflection as Jason with the hockey mask. He already knows what's going on. I mean, he's fully cognizant of the fact that he's changing bodies, and it's a weird moment of emotional content that we neither need nor want from this character.
Well, maybe he's reacting to the fact that he's supposedly looking in the mirror at his own reflection, but the movement of the reflection doesn't align at all with the movements of the person staring into the mirror. So the effect is completely lost from the second it starts.
It's really just an excuse to give him a moment to pause so that Steven can run him through with an iron from the fire, causing Josh to stagger and then fall backward through a window to the outside. In a rather comical death scene, Diana is being cradled on the floor by Steven and gasps out, imploring him to save Jessica. Unfortunately, she croaks just as her boyfriend, the elderly sheriff, arrives, and he assumes that Steven is responsible for this murder because he's literally got blood all over his hands. Diana was played by Erin Gray, who was one of my earliest celebrity crushes. She started out as a model and wound up on Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, which was a TV series in the late 70s. She played Wilma Deering and ran around in a little satin jumpsuit. And then she also played Kate Summers on Silver Spoons, who became Ricky's stepmom after she married Edward Stratton III. She's had a lot of genre parts and seems to embrace kind of the fan side of culture. And one of the more recent credits I could find for her was on Baywatch as Chief Monica Johnson.
She was also in a movie called Nuclear Hurricane, which sounds a lot cooler than this one. Now that Sheriff Landis suspects that Steven is responsible for Diana's death, we head to the police station where Steven is being questioned by Deputy Randy, who we saw earlier in the diner. I guess they know each other because Randy tells Steven that he doesn't believe that he would kill Diana. So, again, it's a small town. Maybe these guys are just buddies from, high school or whatever.
Yeah, it seems like they're kind of old friends or something. There's definitely a dynamic there.
The next morning we go back to Diana's house and...
Is it the next morning? The timeline here is vague because Jessica arrives wearing black and has a somber tone to her mood. So she's clearly been informed of her mother's murder. she's also had to travel from what I presume is California, where the American Case File is filmed, because it seemed awfully late in the evening to be calling her mom to tell about her new boyfriend. So I kind of felt like there was a time difference.
No, that's true. I mean, I did put the next morning question mark because I have no idea. And I also did make a note that she doesn't seem all that distraught. Jessica doesn't seem all that distraught considering that her mother was murdered the day before. So maybe there has been a few days, but
it feels like some time has passed because she seems more chill with the mourning period than you would expect her to be. Plus, the baby has had enough time to grow a full head of hair.
Regardless, Jessica walks in the front door, which is on street level, and then wheels her stroller into the next room where Diana was murdered. And I'm only pointing this out because Deputy Josh was thrown out of the second floor window and landed on the ground below. Now, it could be like one of these like split level ranch scenarios where the entrance to the front of the house is on street level, but then when you go back, the front level is actually the second floor of the back of the house. But it's very just geographically confusing because she clearly walks in the front door, makes a turn into the room where Diana was murdered, but we just saw Deputy Josh get thrown out of a second floor window. So who knows?
It's a bit garbled, to be sure. She finds the other waitress that we've kind of seen in the background scrubbing this giant pool of blood out of the carpet, which is oddly funny in a dark sort of way.
Yeah, I love that the waitress from the diner was recruited to clean the blood off the carpet.
Yeah, not like a crime scene cleanup company or something.
So Vicky sees Jessica and not only recognizes her as Diana's daughter, but apologizes for not having the blood-soaked carpet cleaned up sooner. But when she sees Jessica's baby, she has no idea who it belongs to and even asks Jessica if the baby is hers. Now, Vicky and Diana worked together, so don't you think that Diana would have mentioned something about her granddaughter? And to make matters more confusing, once Jessica tells her who the baby is, Vicky says that the baby has Steven's eyes, so she knew who the father was, but not the mother?
Well, and I mean, yes, all of those points are true. I also wonder what situation Vicky has in her head if Jessica's answer had been, no, it's not mine.
Right. I just found it. And Jessica asks Vicky where Steven is, and Vicky's like, yeah, about that.
Yeah, he's been hauled in for questioning, so Jessica takes the baby and the American Case File host guy to the sheriff's station.
So we head back to the police station, and Deputy Randy is leading Steven from the interrogation room into a jail cell. There's a female cop wearing glasses who's escorting Steven, and she's the "no fucking shit, lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?" lady that John McClane is talking to in Die Hard.
Are you fucking shitting me?
I'm kid you not. Isn't that amazing?
The curly-haired, dark-haired woman who's like...
There's like a dark-haired cop who's wearing glasses, and she's got her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she's kind of like escorting Steven with Randy, and she's the cop on the phone call with John McClane.
I'm turning the movie on right now, and I'm going to that scene because I believe you. Like, I absolutely believe you. I'm not verifying this. I need to see that for myself because it's so mind-blowing. How did I miss that? Sir, this is reserved for emergency calls only. No fucking shit, lady. I can't believe it. Okay, there she is. I think she may have been lying on her resume. Yeah, there's no way I would have ever pegged that. I mean, okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because that's legit, but I don't see it. I can picture that woman's face perfectly in my mind from Die Hard, but that is not what I'm seeing on screen. Hilarious.
So as Steven is being escorted to the jail cell, that's where he passes Jessica and baby Stephanie and Vicky and the American Case File host and Jessica's new boyfriend, Robert Campbell. As Randy is locking Steven in the cell, he tells him that he's going to bust his ass to prove Steven's innocence, but Steven's going to have to play it cool, otherwise Sheriff Landis is going to kill him.
It only just hit me now that the sheriff is named Sheriff Landis, which is obviously a reference to John Landis, the film director of American Werewolf in London and Thriller, the Michael Jackson video. We won't talk about Twilight Zone, the movie. Jessica hands baby Stephanie off to Vicky the waitress, along with a backpack full of, baby bum wipes and all sorts of childcare implements. Vicky leaves to apparently go babysit while on shift at the diner.
We cut back to the jail cell, and Stephen is lying on his cot when the person in the cell next to him starts teasing him for killing the mother of the girl he loves. It's Creighton Duke.
Of course, because he's a fucking asshole.
But I have no idea how the hell Creighton knows what Stephen did.
Isn't there jail cell gossip?
I guess.
With no one else in the other cell?
So Stephen tells Duke that he didn't do it, and Duke actually believes him, telling him that he knows Jason was the one who killed Diana. And Duke then goes on to say that there's only one way to put an end to that devil, and only he knows the way.
Ugh.
Of course, Stephen wants to know how to do it, but Duke says that the type of information comes at a price, and commence one of the longest, most painful exposition scenes I've ever seen in any movie. Stephen tells Duke that he's willing to pay whatever the price is. So Duke asks Stephen to give him his hand. Stephen slides his hand between the bars, and Duke breaks his fingers. Now that this stupid interaction has taken place, Duke can finally tell Stephen how to kill Jason Voorhees. And buckle up, because it's a laundry list. The only way to kill Jason is to destroy his heart, and there's only one person who can do that now that Diana is dead. Jessica. Duke says that Jason knows this too, so he's going to be hunting down Jessica for the same reason he was hunting down Diana. You keeping up, Craig?
I have so many questions, but continue.
Well, Stephen asks questions too, so he asks why, and Duke says that he has to pay for the information, so we go through the stupid finger-breaking routine all over again. Duke then says that the FBI destroyed Jason's body, so now he needs a new one. The one he's jumping in and out of can't last because they get disease and he gets weak.
Okay, I'm following along here.
I'm glad somebody is.
Does he move on to Stephen's toes next?
Maybe. He then says that Jason needs to be reborn again, and he needs Jessica to do it. Stephen once again asks why, and Duke informs him that this is very, very expensive information, and he doesn't think Stephen is willing to pay the price.
Oh no, is this going to involve a zipper?
Zoop. So Stephen immediately puts his hand through the jail bars again to pay his next toll, but Duke decides to give them this bit of information for free. And this is where he says, "In a Voorhees was he born, through a Voorhees may he be reborn, and only by the hands of a Voorhees will he die." Is this some saying that he concocted himself, or are we supposed to believe that this is some legend that's passed down to a chosen few?
Was there some prophecy that was written down in some stupid book somewhere that was bound in human flesh and inked in human blood or some bullshit?
I don't know. But wait, there's more. We then learn the astonishing fact that Jason Voorhees, only child of Pamela Voorhees, has a fucking sister.
No, he doesn't.
And it's Diana.
No, he doesn't. No, it's not.
That's what Duke says, Craig. It's got to be true.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, is that all? Like, is that the end of the scene, or is there more?
Oh, there's more. So now that Diana, Jason's sister, is dead, he only has 2 blood relatives left in the world with the power to kill him or make him reborn. Jessica, who is Jason's niece, and Stephanie, who, try not to laugh, is Jason's grandniece. So Duke tells Stephen that he must convince Jessica of her birthright by going to the Voorhees house and find proof. Now, I understand there's absolutely nothing to unpack in that scene, so we should probably just move on.
Yeah, we'll just move on. That's fine. All right. My reaction to this changed a little bit watching it back in June or whenever it was that we were initially going to record this season. I then wanted to refresh myself and rewatch it again over the last couple of nights. And as you say, it's a scene that's painfully loaded with exposition. And it has this awkward mechanism of the finger breaking going on just to kind of give the scene something else other than 2 people just talking back and forth. But I wanting to give credit where credit is due, I found myself appreciating the fact that this was kind of a let's measure each other's dick size while we exchange this information. So, Duke starts out as hostile to Stephen because Stephen has not proven himself. Stephen then allows his fingers to be broken twice. And when it comes to the third, quote unquote, most important piece of information, he insists that he's willing to pay the very expensive price, which we presume is his whole hand or his wrist or whatever. And Duke takes a moment and sizes Stephen up and then gives it to him for free because now he knows Stephen has proven himself. I don't need to keep breaking this jerk's hand because he's shown me that he is dedicated to what I'm telling him. So I kind of liked that dynamic. It went on way too long and it was pointless and kind of stupid. But I kind of got into the rhythm of it a little bit when I watched it last night. That's not to say it's good, but there it is. The other factor that we have to discuss is this whole prophecy of the Voorhees family and that only Jason's sister can kill him, blah, 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 blah. If that's remotely true, why is Jason only giving a single shit about this now? And it's never come up before. He's never tried to kill his sister, even though she lived in the same fucking town. She's in Crystal Lake. She works at the diner. So why is it an issue all of the sudden? Is it because he lost his real body in the FBI raid, and so now he's more vulnerable than he was before? It's this whole layer of mythology that never needed to be added to the franchise to begin with, but I just can't get past the question of why it's suddenly so important.
Well, I think it's just coming up now because it's complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind-boggling, the rabbit holes you go down when you start to unpack this too much. None of it makes any sense. We have never been led to believe at any point in the previous 8 movies that Jason has a sibling. And like you said, why now? Why is now the opportune time? He was pretty fucked up at the end of Jason Takes Manhattan. Why wasn't that the time to go search for his sister or his...
There's a little boy in gray swim trunks running around looking for his elderly sister.
I don't even know. I mean, this has always been one of the just, staggeringly stupid elements of this movie that just doesn't make any sense. And you can't even retrofit it into the previous stories with like a clever explanation of like, hey, he didn't know he had a sister because his mom told him that he was an only child because he wanted him to feel special. But he recently discovered, somehow, I don't know, like going through, 23andMe or something, that he learned that he has a sister in town. Like, I don't know, like you can explain it away. It doesn't make it any less bullshit, but you can at least justify like, okay, why is this now suddenly becoming an issue for him?
It's the worst kind of retcon, which is something that directly contradicts information that we were given in the past before they'd ever conceived of any of this crap. And yet is you have to force it to make sense within the context of what we're seeing. It's sort of like, the first Star Wars movie when Ben Kenobi says that, Luke Skywalker's father was murdered by Darth Vader because they hadn't come up with the idea that Darth Vader was his father. So then they have to bend over backwards to come up with this like, oh, well, he became someone other than your father when he turned to evil. And it's just sort of, Pamela Voorhees explicitly says that Jason was her only child. So there's probably some fan fiction nonsense about how she doesn't consider Diana to be her daughter because she was born out of wedlock, or she was, a girl and Pamela only recognizes male Voorhees children, or some stupid crap that you have to internally justify to have this make any sense. And I hate that kind of thing.
So to sum up what we've learned is that the only way Jason can truly be killed is if he is killed by another Voorhees. And because Diana's dead, that just leaves Jessica and baby Stephanie. And I desperately hoping that it comes down to a showdown of baby Stephanie versus Jason, but we're just going to have to wait and see.
She would charm the pants off him, which is something I don't want to see. I'm curious that this whole Voorhees prophecy thing did not come up in any of the occult books that Tommy Jarvis bought around town when he was here trying to kill Jason once and for all.
Which begs the question, how did, Duke come into possession of this information?
Right.
Like, how does he know this and apparently nobody else? Like, not even the Voorhees family knows this.
Well, they can't even spell their own name correctly, Brian. So let's, give them some leeway. Having learned this genre-bending and series-ruining information, Stephen then realizes that it's up to him to escape from jail and inform Jessica of what he has just learned and then save the day. So he has to lure his friend Randy to the cell. He does this by saying that crazy Creighton Duke broke his hand, and Randy sympathetically runs over to assist his injured friend, who then takes advantage of the situation by grabbing Randy and conking his head against the cell door bars so that he can grab his gun and order him to open the cell. Segment ends with Randy, seen through those self-same bars, looking bewildered at what has just happened. We have one death here, and it's Diana. So, it feels to me like Aaron Gray was only in this movie for 7 minutes.
You're also forgetting the death of the mythology of this whole franchise.
That's too big to count.
To find out what cleaning product I recommend for getting pesky bloodstains out of carpet, tune in next week for another episode of
You're All Doomed. Oh, God, that is so stupid.